So welcome everyone. It's so great to have you all here tonight on this snowy evening. I want to begin with thought bubbles. And the first is from the late great Ukrainian poet Adam Zagajewski, who writes in his book Another Beauty, to defend poetry means to defend a fundamental gift of human nature. That is, our capacity to experience the world's wonder, to uncover divinity in the cosmos and in another human being, in a lizard, in chestnut leaves, to experience astonishment and to stop still in that astonishment for an extended moment or two. The human race won't persist if this won't perish, if this capacity withers, but it will be weaker, worse off, different from what it was throughout those millennia when every civilization placed poetry in whatever form at the heart of all human endeavor. And the Irish poet, Brendan Kennelly, says, poetry is above all a singing art of natural and magical connection, because though it is born out of one person's solitude, it has the ability to reach out and touch in a humane and warmly illuminating way the solitude, even the loneliness in others. That is why, to me, poetry is one of the most vital treasures that humanity possesses. It is a bridge between separated souls. And I love this from Wisława Szymborska. She says, I prefer the absurdity of writing poems to the absurdity of not writing poems. Well, we have two wonderful poets tonight, and our first is Clara Silverstein, who is the author of the historical novel Secrets in a House Divided, the memoir White Girl, a story of school desegregation, and 4 nonfiction books. Her poems have appeared in journals, including Blackbird, the Patterson Literary Review, and Chautauqua, and at Boston City Hall. She studied for many years with Barbara Helfgott Hyatt in the Workshop for Publishing Poets. Currently, she teaches at Grub Street and works at a history museum that was once a stop on the Underground Railroad. Please welcome Clara.
Thank you. Thank you for that nice introduction, Richard, and also for organizing our whole series. I also want to acknowledge Barbara Helfgott Hyatt as one of my early mentors, and Gray Held is one of my more recent mentors. These poems come from a manuscript that I've just put together called Above the Fall Line. And they look at history in different ways, personal history definitely, but then some deeper and more general history as well. So we're going to start in Richmond, Virginia, which is where I grew up. Tourist in my hometown. When my mother puts my childhood home in Richmond on the market, I return to wander the lawn, magnolia blossoms littered like crushed coffee cups, at the apartments under construction, in weeds near the Esso station, where my best friend and I wriggled under the chain link fence after men left for the day, tiptoed up plywood stairs to framed rooms where we fingered idle drills, table saws, nail guns, blew smoke rings out roughed in windows, spied on everything we would leave at the houses below, the wire weave of porch screens, sitting the glow of television, families sparring and guffawing, everything we wanted in the humming edges where the floodlights died away. running the Richmond Marathon 2006. Off, Kenyon's first along Broad Street, past taverns with blacked out windows, discount shoes, department stores closed to make way for condos. Today, nervous runners like me with jagged gait ease into the breathing, the practiced pace, measured in minutes per mile, step and breathe, 1 mile after another. And here comes Arthur Ashe, racket raised, for years unheralded in his hometown, turned away. Now my mother's high school, Dixie at assemblies, lunches packed by maids, giving way to kids strutting like Superfly among hippie wannabes, daisies threading their jeans. Time to cross the river, fatigue and heat fading the skyline, banks and warehouses stacked like blocks, a landscape I could rearrange with the sweep of one sweaty hand, back to the beginning, a bluff above the fall line of the James. But I keep following the arrows, the mile signs, metronome feet, time collapsing into an arch of balloons. I can get there, move ahead. I can cross that line. And this is some very recent Richmond history, although it certainly has a lot to do with the past as well. The removal of General Robert E. Lee's statue in Richmond, September 2021. Heedless of his resplendence in the saddle, masked workers chained his bronze boots to hoist his 12 tons off a plinth sprayed with a fist. Blood on your hands. We just want justice. At Lee Circle, where cobblestones rattled my bike on my way to school. As they turned the winch, Lee was garrulous, rehashing strategies, quadrilles and assemblies, though he looked away when they asked about losses. Now he's in a warehouse, forsaken beside a dollhouse, plantation miniature with columns and veranda in storage, and the stopped hands of a clock from a grandiose department store that closed decades ago. And now we're going to go back to the 1970s. You heard in the introduction that I'm the author of a memoir about growing up during school desegregation. So that informs a lot of these poems. School desegregation, 1970s. What's going on? Marvin Gaye. Volume dialed up from scratchy transistors on the playground. We dance the hustle. Teachers huddle by the door, too tired of their jobs to reprimand us. Nobody cares what we do as long as we don't fight. Maybe one day we will leave this weed-choked asphalt, find our own way across the cracks, because a reckoning is coming. And there are a few of a series with the overall title of history class. The Only White Girl. On film strip days, lights off and shades pulled against the day's glare, I turned sideways in my seat, inched my hand across the pencil groove on my desk. The narrator droned on about Betsy Ross, clever seamstress of our nation's first flag, holding out for 5 pointed stars, though George Washington wanted 6. I reached for the boy in front of me, slid my books to hide our twined fingers. When the lights went on and everyone blinked, oblivious, I wanted to take shears to white cloth, cut stars of my own, make a banner of what I knew. I imagined the early days of the Virginia colony. Wilderness, brackish marshes, English axes, saws, gangplanks, beasts of burden unloaded to break raw land. City chopped out from a swamp, gospel forced. Trades of corn for beads, fields fenced, hunter-gatherers turned trespassers, rivers dammed, renamed, smallpox blankets, rum removal, the king, a villain impeding progress, new nation, sanctity and thirst. To bake apples, 1760. From the barrel down cellar, choose a Rome beauty. Anoint each slice with a store of sweet butter. Strew sugar upon it, a good thickness. A quarter of nutmeg grated. Roll the crust, wet the edges, crimp. Inhale the dear scent. Try not to ache for back home across the heave of water. Give thanks for the harvest, an orchard red and gold. Take the pie down the lane, past thorn bushes etched with frost. Give it to your neighbor.
Mm.
And this was not exactly history class, but it was a class I took. And it is eerily timely. Sex ed, 10th grade.
Mm.
The teacher doesn't tell us how to feel. She calmly points out erogenous zones on a diagram, one male, one female. I wasn't expecting the underarms or such matter-of-fact delivery from a slim 26-year-old divorcee. We have to find sex partners on our own. I don't want boys in the class who know too much, or the others, goofballs, partiers hopped up on six-packs, the married neighbor out by his garage, cigarette smoke barely veiling his leer. Nobody knows I panic when undressed near others, head an airplane over clouds of skin. Here are the controls, diaphragms, pills, condoms unrolled on a plastic penis. Don't trust withdrawal or coke douche. If all fails, there's the clinic. The teacher drives us on a field trip, tells us to ignore those fanatics out front, their chants and gruesome posters. It's legal now. We have the right to the metal table, stirrups, aspirator, antiseptic instead of alleys.
Wow.
Yeah. So a bit of a change of mood here. I never thought that poem would seem like it was timely again, but unfortunately it does.
Mm-hmm.
This is one that has to do with looking through a family album. And the title refers to an old kind of photography. So just picture yourself looking at this photo with me. Ambrotype. At 17, great-grandpappy Tim, solemn in slouch hat and gray shell jacket in the Carolinas campaign, unsparing path of Sherman. Mustered out, he went back to farming. My grandmother remembers his whiskers, rough as unplaned wood. Now I want to trace his part of my story. I drive south out of snow by a river named Tar. Downtown's a relic from 1910. The road named after the family leads to a trailer park in a parched field. Nobody looks when I step from the car. I'm just leaving anyway, following the line of march to Devil's Racetrack Road, where I scuff the dirt of heritage. So now we're finally getting to Boston. And this came out of, I see some people from my free write group are here. And this started with a prompt in that group. The prompt was, why did you move away? But the answer I have for that is why I moved to Boston. What's mine I built from squares and rotaries, eyebrow windows and dove coats, striding in tough boots that stand up to slush and salt, lacerations of snow in my face, servers rushing through my coffee order, what's regular and what's not. I wanted to leave the languor, gouged out war trenches, the mansion my grandfather built and lost to the bank. Crepe myrtle trees with bark that peeled like scabs. A blue line highlights the route I follow now, thicket of roads and riverways. I can turn off and lose myself. This one has to do with the house where I used to live in Boston, where I raised my children. I know every invasive, every bulb with ruffled purple fisted in its center, the rock wall shine of poison ivy, and the willow, a spangled cathedral for remains of our pets. There's shelter under the forsythia, its splinters of yellow each dreary march, and the dogwood that sprawls but never flowers. The cedar now soars above the window where my daughter greeted a robin family, its babies quivering with need, boughs cradling walls, its trunk an old friend. Let's see, I have 3 more. Do I have time?
Yes.
Or should I?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. This one, my father, I lost my father more than 50 years ago, and I'm still writing about it. Elegy for my father. Just last week, our neighbor nailed a red telephone with rotary dial to a tree, invited passersby to pick it up, listen for voices of those we had lost. I cradled the plastic to my ear, called my father. The number remembered from when he taught me what to do if I got lost. That day I came home from 2nd grade, I told him, and mother said you were gone. I held your pen, swallowed the water in your green cup. I sat on shoes in your closet, reached for your sleeves. After we moved, all I had left, your red and black checkered hunting jacket, barely warm enough. Day after day at the school bus stop, I circled, hands jammed in pockets, trying to keep warm. And this one, I lost my mother right before the pandemic, so that gave rise to making a mask with my mother's sewing kit. Left a needle already threaded with black for a quick fix of a rip and a felt cushion shaped like a heart stuck with pins, spools to match the only colors she wore, navy, cream, plum. I use her gold scissors to cut up my t-shirt from a festival of twanging music she never listened to, stitch a rectangle to stifle my breath. I follow the rules, flatten the curve she escaped, which threatens to undo me. She used to fit together hems and seams, practical and prepared, each stitch tallying what I owed her, which could never be enough. The mask hides the narrow lips I inherited, the one she kept clamped. I try on the thimble, inhale its brass smell. It won't protect me. And finally, I'm happy to report that I end up in a poem titled A Calm Place. I swim through the golden light of leaves reflected, the majesty of branches above me, churn in confident rhythms, stroke, flutter, glide through the province of mute swans not yet migrated. In this season of wild grapes, I take nourishment from tangled ferment, turn my worried breath into a spangled wake of bubbles. Thank you. And I look forward to hearing Mary read now.
Wow, Clara, that was really so beautiful. I did sigh a few times. You might have heard. I think it's a little unnerving that we mute ourselves because there's so much there that if we were a live group, you'd be getting lots of applause.
Thank you. Yeah.
Let's at least
Right.
do it visually, if not audibly.
Again, thank you.
So let me see. I don't want to remove myself. Let me see. Okay. Such a beautiful reading. Thank you so much, Clara. Next up, we have Mary Buchinger. No, I didn't say that right. Buchinger.
Buchinger. Mm-hmm.
Buchinger, yeah.
Yeah.
We rehearsed this, and I'm still fumbling through. Mary is the author of 5 poetry collections, including Virology and Klotz. That's the pronunciation for the word cloud. Both from Lily Poetry Review Books, 2022 and 2021, respectively, and Enfindung, In Feeling, Main Street Rag, 2018, and Aerialist, Goldwake, 2015. She serves I'm getting some reverb here. She serves on the New England Poetry Club board and teaches at the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences in Boston. Her work has appeared in Agni, Gargoyle, Interim, Hank, Phoebe, Plume, Queen Mob's Tea House, Salt Hill, Seneca Review, and elsewhere. Please help me welcome Mary.
Hi, thank you so much for that. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Clara. And thanks to all who are here tonight. Really good to see so many faces that I know. I'm very grateful to you for coming. So I'm going to start my reading with a New Year's poem because it's a new year. Mm-hmm. New Year's always, you start to think about all kinds of new possibilities. So this poem is called New Year's Eve Afternoon. Avon Hill lifts its houses up and over the shoulders of other old houses. Each household strange as mine, walled within. This salmon pink Victorian with its sturdy door, stucco exterior beginning to crack, lichen creeping up the edges. Let's walk by it again, Dover. I tug her leash, redirect her fervent pursuits. And the house unfolds like a revelation. Something here about the new year, or the old one, in its turret, its bubbled glass, garden entry, sinking sideways, staked roses wrapped against winter, gray granite cobblestones in the walkway bucking up against each other, against original intentions, but following laws, particles acting how they must. Patches visible as interruptions, efforts, a series of cuts and stitches. What we inherit, what we work ourselves into. There are lives in that house, accumulating in its moldering darkness. And I will never know them, will barely know my own. Dover nudges my hand, proposes we move on. So, Richard mentioned the date. It is January 6th, and there are all kinds of things to think about on January 6th, but there's kind of one that's... So this next poem is titled Another Poem About Politics.
Mm.
A woman brings her dog inside CVS. She's picking up her prescription. The dog snarls, suddenly, viciously lashes out. People gasp, scurry away. She and the dog go to the front of the line. Someone moves, and the dog lunges the length of its leash, snaps its teeth. The woman complains, I have no privacy. This is personal, medical information. Everyone in the store is looking at her. She tries to shush the dog, is waved over to another register. I can't, she says. The dog, pulling away from her, barks and snarls. To go all the way there again, I can't, she says, desperate. She looks trapped, leashed, afraid, as she tries to rein in the dog. The scruffy dog is neither small nor large, ugly with fear, scrawny and strong. Its fur, brown and white, stands on end. It's out of its mind, lunging and barking. The manager and I stand beside cans of pet food. We watch, needing to see what will happen next. Whatever makes it dog and not wolf is wearing away, coming and going like a weak station on the radio. Once, when I was a child, I reached down to pet my aunt's dog, who knew me, had played with me. But in the moment of my touch, it had been dreaming and all alone, running, maybe with other dogs, in some other kingdom, far away, where it didn't have to be what made it a dog. And it snapped. I didn't recognize the noise it made as it took my hand between its teeth. And I was squirrel or rabbit or rat. My animal blood filling the sink. I'd met the other side of the dog, the other side of me.
Mm-hmm.
So this next poem is called The River in January. And I love to walk the Mass Ave Bridge across the Charles River.
Mm-hmm.
There's no ice this year. Usually in January, there's a mix of ice and it thaws and freezes. And so it's not happening this year. But So this poem is a pantoum, and it has lines that repeat. So kind of like the freezing and the thawing that one expects in January. The river in January, a naked marriage of days and nights, sheets of ice buckled by unseen currents. And on the bank, a city busy as a child. Its likeness, sometimes perfect, captured. Frozen rafts buckle against above fleeting currents, catch bits of trash and passing snow. Their likeness, sometimes perfect, captured in silver or slate. Time, awake or waked, catches me in mine. Solitary and joined, I flow and course, braided as the river, in slate and silver. Love, waked or awake, unsheathes night's ice. How it gleams in sun. My love and I flow, freeze, break, braid. And on the bank, a city busy as a child. Old knives of ice glitter in morning air. A naked marriage of nights and days. So I am going to share my screen now. And hope you can see this. So I just wanted you to see a couple of pieces of some art that I refer to in this next poem. Next poem is it's a prose poem. It's the last poem I'll read, but it's also a bit long. But it's called On the Fly. And I'm in a plane. It's called On the Fly with Mice and Men. Mm-hmm. So this first painting that you can see is by Georgia O'Keeffe. And the next one is by an artist called Hundertwasser. He was an Austrian painter, an activist. And there's another Hundertwasser. And then finally, a couple of paintings by Mark Rothko. And I'm just going to leave these up if that's okay. So Mark Rothko just has these fields of color, which I just love. So we'll stay with Georgia O'Keeffe here. Okay. So this poem is called On the Fly with Mice and Men. On the fly with mice and men. And below me, fields of snow crowd a black vein river, winding between furred and furrowed mole brown gray hills, raked by time. We are so new on earth. We think we are in charge. These fingerling highways and crushed can cities. A poem is a picture of something I mean to keep, to return to show you, even as it flies away. My love carries maps in his head. When we fly over Cambridge, he says, there's Fresh Pond. There's the Sears building. There's Mount Auburn Cemetery. We fly over Lake Huron and across the thumb of Michigan on our way west, 37,000 feet in the air. He says, there's your farm. See the windmills along M15? I lean over and look for the ditch I played in, its silver metal culvert and tiger lily zoo. I'm thinking of my love now as I fly away from my home with him to my home with my mother. I'm looking for Fresh Pond, that circle of park and drinking water that once supplied ice to India in the hulls of wooden clipper ships. I know it on foot, have walked its 2-mile circumference in snow and bloom. I'm flying over upstate New York, or is it Canada? And looking still for a small circle of blue. Everything is a version of what I already know. Hillary says birds don't fly aimlessly. She's thinking about the necessary economy of feathers and seeds, bones hollowed out, no bladder to weigh down, no notebooks. I am flying to see my mother. My aim is clear, though I must take the route of American Airlines through O'Hare. This morning, on my way into the airport, I watched seagulls in the sunrise circle the city. What are they finding in the winter streets? And what of the swifts who never land? How can they think through the endless trajectory of here to there? Snatching nest material on the fly, floating feathers and flower petals, scraps of paper and leaves. To aim means to have a plan. What ticket did you buy, dear blue jay? Dear endangered woodland birds. I fly, you fly. Only my flight subsumes yours. Blue sky, silver plain, white clouds, gray cities, sulfur shore, blue lake. The earth spread out on the table of my vision. Its vessels and ventricles pulsing highways, erupting pustular power plants, dendrites of lights and parking lots. I cannot fix you, only absolve you. The body in me sees the body in you. The wreckage in me sees the wreckage in you. Still, the ghost spirals down and cathedrals crack. It's miraculous how rivers find what's really there, while the human geographer knows only line meets line, the angle consistent, regardless. Grand features of land reduced to obstacles. How aimless the river, the mountain, the valley, their shapes respective of geology, those ancient and urgent forces. The geographer forces grid after grid after grid, an ant with an idea, a singular, frustrated notion of the way things should be. It's not evil, just ill fit, this linear dress on the great round earth. A life story. The ant carries the tree on its back, its portion of the whole, its chopped sail of green, its abstract life work held above its head. Across the tumid forest floor, the load growing heavier and lighter the long way home. From my window, I track the black contrail of another plane against a featherless gob of cloud. Below a blue atmosphere, all of us moving above a puckered stew. Georgia O'Keeffe, cobbler of cloud. This way and that the planes go, making the sky a field of designs. Each plane has a life made of lives, the print of its makers, the oil of maintenance, the rust of the rains, the fuel of ferns fermented and burned, the engines, the wing, the tail, the wheels, and me, my coffee, my cookie, my baggie of nuts and dried cherries. The many planes of me send themselves from here to there. En route, I tighten my seatbelt, my shiny round bolts. Distance reveals how rivers queer the landscape, with each oxbow, thalweg, and delta. Thank you, water and snow, for locating meaning against the grid. Rothkos and Hundertwassers side by side. Celadon and silver, suburb and field. The bird's flight is informed by the angle of the sun. Unseen magnetic auras, the taste of air, signs of water. Hope carries mice and men in its brawny arms. No farm of their own for Lenny and George. The dream ends, looking for what isn't there, what never will be for them. My father painted fields, green and gold, fat laden brushes, a seasonal palette, his team of sun and dirt. He believed the good of me. Again, so be it. And sweet, we spent our farm, its hardy generations and long gone barn. How I love snow, leaning on the shoulder of a roof, heavy as a sleeping child. Each flake come to rest. How far it traveled through dark and light. Thank you.
Wow. Yes. Wow. Really so wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yay.
Well, now we get to hear from a few other people in this copious room that we've got tonight against the cold and the snow. And I want to start out with our good friend, David Miller.
Okay, well, so I have to follow Mary and Clara, eh? I shouldn't sign up so early when to reply your emails. That's really it. But thank you, and Clara and Mary, thank you very much indeed. Well, here's a persona poem my mother, when she was in high school, she was in a lot of theater and some operettas. But there was one that she was in, one operetta, one Gilbert and Sullivan operetta, where she was amazingly cast against type. Still amazes me. And that's just the intro. That's what I'll say. There's on the page of this poem, there's some text in quotation marks. Those are quotations from her high school yearbooks, and I'll do this thing, you know. But there's other text that's in italics, and those are song lyrics, and I'm not going to muddy things up any further by doing any further gesture. You just have to sort of imagine if something sounds a little out of register, it's probably song lyrics. So here we go. Mad Margaret. I corkscrew across the stage, rat wig teased out, dress torn just enough to pass for shady, not to make daddy avert his look or for mother to scold me later. A not demure hint of raccoon at the eyes. Someone whispers, "Is that really Dottie?" I hate Dottie, stupid name. I'll hate it when they write Dottie in my yearbook. I'm Dorothy Helen Moody, Burlington, Vermont. I painted myself as a good little pal in Don't Keep Him Waiting. The yearbook writes me down that way. I amused them as a career girl in the making who, don't fret, becomes a most delightful, feminine young lady as Ever Since Eve prisses along. These plays are nifty laugh barrels. Mr. Truman's president. Next year, I'll grow wings, turn their heads as Gilbert and Sullivan's Iolanthe, lend the fairy queen my soft, sweet voice, wistful for her own lost love. But this year, we've dug up Ruddy Gore or The Witch's Curse and sing, "Oh, rapture, I'm not a simpering sweetheart, not Rose Maybud, all glowing with virgin blushes." Gilbert's crazy exclamation points. Daft Madge, Crazy Meg, Mad Margaret, poor Peg. I wring hysteria from every ragged he. I'm 16. She's love lonely, but not me. I already have the one I will marry. Korea won't grab him. I did instead. Popular kid. I'm no Violet half hidden, but on stage, this maiden is crazed in front of the whole school. That Rose Maybud, she's a smart little craft. Neat, bright, prim, sweet, tight, trim. But what does she know about the fangs of love? She'll be anybody's bride, any smug, ship-shaped, tidy pants wearer. I'm Mad Margaret, hopeless one-man woman, falsely loved, cruelly left by Sir Despard Murgatroyd. My heart a-breaking in every performance. My anxiety, a coal mine fire sharpened to a point. I rivet Sullivan's melody with perfect pitches all over the auditorium. Everyone's eyes locked on my moving mouth. Am I the yearbook's best actor? Better make me most dramatic. I lift from the ground singing, from stage girl shoes to the ceiling, and they'll joke about mad me till I graduate. In the class will, they'll call me nuts. Me, imagined wallflower, exceedingly odd young lady. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Love the singing. Next up, we have Marcia Karp.
Thank you for the, excuse me. Thank you for the beautiful poetry, the chance to read. The question. There must have been one who'd have set in my hair daisies. I see now what I hadn't seen then, when my hair with daisies should have been set. A beauty to me, and completeness enough to bring to another enough for a couple to put on. I have to think I would have shied, ducked my head, left him afraid to trust this creature he would crown. Still young, so still tender, he would have stood, would have gathered I was lost, then himself and his daisies up, and left me still now wondering if, though there must have been, was there one who'd ever come round? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Up next, we've got Jeffrey Brommer. I'm glad you've got your back.
I lost electricity and I was under candlelight for about 30 minutes. So
Wow.
Thank you very much for hanging in there. And Mary and Clara, thank you very much for sharing your beautiful poems. My poem is fairly short. It's titled, I Cry. It's dedicated to a 19th century poet named Abby Hutchinson Patton, who I recently visited her grave in Milton, New Hampshire. She was known more as a singer than as a poet. She actually Charles Dickens had a reception for her, and her voice was so beautiful and so sweet that it could calm mobs, which I guess we need more of that in our poetry. I guess she would say, as you would say, David, she was a bridge for broken souls. Because once when she was singing, she and her family were abolitionists, and there was a mob that was obviously, they were totally tearing up the theater and everything. But when they heard her sing a song called Slave's Appeal, because her voice was so beautiful, so pure, and so moving, the whole place became absolutely quiet, and they listened to her. So my poem is called I Cry. It's dedicated to Abby Hutchinson Patton. As the songs of the universe flow through me, and I touch both the deepest oceans and the farthest stars, I cry. Because creation is so awesome, but fragile, so blessed, so beautiful it hurts. And love is rippling, reverberating through every photon, atom, and quark. I cry. Because death swallows up life, and life swallows up death. And each single breath, every second is sacred, both new death and new birth. I cry. Because we see, but don't understand, and hear, but don't listen. I cry. Because we are so loved, yet don't conceive, realize, or know it. I cry. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Up next, we have Kent Wittenberg.
Hello, hello everyone. I'm going to read a short poem. The title is Geometries. Do you see those brown pine needles borne by water, reeved through cracks in the abandoned pavement of a Quabbin ghost town? Imperfect though they are, we cannot help but see geometries. Bundles form lines, lines form squares, squares form grids. But who then are we? The storylines conceived in winter warming huts, the family trees that are not trees, the love triangles, the polygons and pixels we leave behind? No. We are the wind between our fingers, the brightening rivulets of sea marsh grass. We are the balsam and the pine copse, the calls of eastern peewees. We are our dreams, freight training through the night. Not the shapes imagined by those who come after us. They conjecture geometries that are not.
Thank you. Up next, Jonathan Abel.
Yes, these are a difficult pair to follow. Such wonderful readings. Thank you. My poem is called Ironing My Own Shirts, and it starts with a little piece of Robert Pinsky's shirt. The back, the yoke, the yardage, lap seams, the nearly invisible stitches along the collar. Button-down shirts are a pain. I've never figured out how to drape them over the board so the off sleeve doesn't reach down towards the dust, and the onboard sleeve, does a seam go in front or in back? Just like on the phone at work, talking with my oldest brother when I should be finishing a proposal, but how to end the call? Should I just say, bye, Dave, and hang up? I always think of a last detail almost forgotten, and I forget to secure a time. We'll talk again. A management training tip. What to say when the call comes in the middle of a shirt? Happy to hear from my brother, unhappy at the interruption. Besides, the phone cord doesn't reach to the board, and that would be rude to talk while ironing. So I let the iron cool its heel, and slowly the shirt slubs off the board, only one sleeve done. The next day at the office, no one seems to notice. And one more note that's just appeared in the Book of Matches, issue 7.
Very good. Congrats.
Thank you.
Up next, Kathy Whittam.
All right. Hold on to restart this, even though it's all set up. Okay. Thanks to the fabulous readers. What an enjoyable time to listen to them. Okay, heat rising in interrupted winter. The barely touch of my fingertips, your feathery hair, my breath through rounded lips, how it must cool your skin like rivulets. Moments pausing in haiku, inflow and outflow, smash into peaks, waves of things wanting to be said. But oh, the softness, my cheek against your chest, the way my cat pats herself on your hand, only less insistent. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Carla Schwartz.
Hello. What an amazing night tonight. And thank you, Richard and Clara and Mary and everybody else. It's so good. So Mary had mentioned the idea of the river being frozen. I have a bunch of frozen water poems, and this poem is in my newest chapbook called Signs of Marriage, and it's called Skating Black Ice. It's just a simple love poem. Skating black ice is even better after skating bumps, better than walking on ice, hearing it crunch under the spikes fixed in my shoes that propel me forward, not down, On black ice, I glide like a sail, blade, glide, free to fly, or the fear of falling, of breaking, of crashing through. Better than thinking, better than grieving, better than almost anything other than you. Very simple. When I wrote hors de fear, it's like hors d'oeuvres, the same HORS, just so you know. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Up next, Connemara Wadsworth.
You're muted, Connemara.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Okay. This is the beginning from a series of poems about my husband's, I don't know how to phrase it, but it's a journey of cancer and how we handled it. However, before I start reading this, I want to thank Clara and Mary for their wonderful, wonderful reading. Hard words. Hard to hear, how to read hard words that lean heavily against hope, to avoid that small death in knowing nothing will ever be the same, as fear, anger, resignation pry their way into my soul, a robbery before the incremental losses that tag along no matter where I turn or run. How I must drink that water, take in the nightmare, cliff edge, crash, a hard rain I can't ignore as it rises, fades. My only choice, to live with it, reset my compass. There are days to come, some painful, many blessed. I am not the ill one, but I am in it too. Ill is the wrong description, Rick says. Instead, he chooses words for tomorrow, invites the next, gathers his own strength gently, rereads discharge papers, not a battle to wallow in. I cannot say exactly how he does it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, Margo Wazansky.
Hi, Clara, it was great to see you after so many years and hear your beautiful writing, and to meet Mary and hear yours, Mary. I'm not sure if I've read this one before. I can't remember because my memory is shot, but maybe you won't remember either. Consider this beauty. I'm walking under a sky dense with cloud cover. Sunset flames as the cloud breaks apart. Stripes of water glimmer pure cerulean through a stand of evergreens. A few trees hold on to their brilliance. Ahead on the road, a buck turns to look at me, while I listen to the great mortality on my phone, history of epidemics, hysteria, and blaming in the Middle Ages, and on to the centuries that followed. Jews caused the plagues, shoot them, burn them, no need for trial or even accusation. I pass my neighbor's truck wearing a sticker that signals this year's rumbling and shouting. Trump is still my president. Liberalism is the real pandemic. As a former fetus, I choose life. Take your COVID vaccine and shove it. Hate connected underground like mushrooms, extending across the country. Hate that can show its face anytime, drive its truck into a crowd. The earth chokes from the hate. I feel it in my bones as I walk lonely under that fiery sunset. In the yard, a swarm of swallows zigzags, gathering for the southward flight. All is quiet except the birds. I'm still in love with this world, how it goes on while we try so hard to trouble it. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Margot. Wow. Good for a January 6th gathering, for sure. Up next, Elizabeth Quinlan.
I'm a little fuzzy. I don't know why. Anyway, that's strange. I'm so fuzzy.
No worries.
Okay. Well, this is from a manuscript that I've been working on. I came back to after a long time. That summer, in the sweltering August heat, people sat on their stoops, fanning themselves. Cats cried out in heat. Mickey, our neighbor, gave block dances in the vacant lot, his loudspeaker ringing into all the tenements. Everyone came. My mother had Mickey play her record she recorded at Revere Beach, scratchy sounds, not like her church voice. Come down from your ivory tower, let love come into your heart. She was singing to Johnny down the street. Whenever she saw him, her nostrils flared. Sometimes she talked to Mickey, which made me turn red because everyone knew he took fits now and then with a baseball bat, police chasing him. We all stayed indoors. The next day, my mother would go riding my old bike up and down the street, preaching about the second coming and the fires of hell. Thank you. And Mary and Clara, you were both so wonderful. Thank you.
Love the singing. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Not the best voice, but, yeah. But thank you. Thank you.
Our penultimate reader is Holly Gurin.
Okay. Thank you. I heard when you talked about Clara being so interested in history, I thought, well, I've got to read this poem. It's kind of got to do with a little history, but going back to Vietnam, also very much appreciated Mary's wonderful reading and Clara's too. And I love the open mic. It's so good. American Pie. Bye, bye. The plane crashed 13 years past. Buddy Holly on his way to Fargo to do his wash, which somehow he couldn't do in Clear Lake, Iowa, the day the music died. Other griefs enter, bow slightly, never really leave. The 60s hope falling in the plane of young musicians. This will be the day that I die. Planes of US soldiers, the Vietnamese never found. Good old boys drafted and gone. The same year back from Rome, not quite believing what I'd lost, a husband, an extended family. 2 cultures I'd stolen, the cascading past tapestry of Rome's lush history, gilded on the present. Ukrainian life shared by his family who fled in World War II. Buddy's widow, his high school sweetheart. She's Jackie Kennedy. She's me. She's lots of us. The day the music died.
Thank you, Holly. Well, we'll wrap things up with something that was an ever-present danger when I was a child, and doesn't seem to be much concerning for most people anymore. This is called Quicksand and Lava. My brother and I held our breaths to keep from being killed by quicksand. We had just seen Tarzan on TV.
Mm.
We heard that the surface of the moon might swallow the astronauts whole, and all our hopes go with them. Our school told us Martin Luther King Jr. compared injustice to quicksand, and the Vietnam War was a quagmire. We went to our room to hang our heads from the twin beds just above the lava oozing from the floorboards, threatening to engulf us as we practiced dying, sometimes touching the ground and going into convulsions, leaving the other brother alone and stricken, a world of unknown dangers awaiting us as we fought for our lives on our quiet New Jersey street on a snow day just before lunch. Well, this has been a remarkable evening, everyone. And I wonder, what do you call a group of poets? It's not a murder of poets, for sure.
Murmuration.
A murmuration of poets. I like that.
A gaggle.
Whatever it is, I'm really enjoying the warmth of you all and your presence, and this has really been great. Any other feedback that people want to give to?
Richard, just want to thank you for hosting. You always do such a wonderful, eloquent job. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, ditto.
And
Yeah.
Richard, you might make a little collection of some of those quotes that you give at the beginning.
Oh, I do have them filed away. And just like Marga was saying, sometimes I'm not sure if I said these before. And sometimes I know I've said them before, but I'm hoping you don't remember them.
Some things are worth saying more than once.
Exactly. In fact, I think that's one of the quotes, that everything's been said before, but nobody was listening. So it has to be said again.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes. Yeah, thanks everyone for sharing and being here.
Thank you so much for coming. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Everybody.
Next time.
Great evening.
I think we had some record-breaking attendance this evening. So I really appreciate
Wow.
that.
That's great.
Very good.